Welcome, Emma. I'm so pleased that we're having the chance to connect today and chat a little bit about your time in the program. And it's always a good time when we get together and hang out. There's always so many nerdy, fun topics that we get into. And I figured I just really appreciated your input and your participation in the program. And I would love to take a bit of time to hear a bit more about, yeah, like what drew you to the EQUUSOMA program, your own background, and we'll chat a little bit more about some of the ways it's impacted you personally and your work. So maybe we could start with you sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Well, thank you. My name's Emma Loftus, and I'm a registered uh, biodynamic craniosacral practitioner for humans, and I also work with horses. Um, my background, it was around horses since I was 3. I started riding when I was 6 and was pony obsessed from then on. Um, So horses were always a big part of my life. I was the only one that really was nuts about them in my family. And I then, when probably around 16 years old, I was really keen to go into horse racing. I really loved the thrill of that and became quite obsessed with it. So I was in racing as a track work rider for about 20 years. I rode under rules 8 times in Germany and America. But being a track rider gave me a ticket to, yeah, ride in countries, obviously in the UK, in Germany, the US, New Zealand. I took about 5 years out and got like a regular job in health services. Worked in a hospital for about 5 years doing various different roles, and then moved out to here to Australia in 2009, and worked in horse racing again, but with a view to moving out of it, really. And that's when I started looking at body work. And I came across equine craniosacral therapy at a big horse expo around 2010, and I was quite taken with it because it was the person talking about it was really answering a lot of questions around, that horses do have headaches and there is a connection between the head and the sacrum. And it seemed
Mm,
quite fascinating to me. So I did enroll in this in like 4 levels with this person who actually was teaching back in the UK.
cool.
And that was my beginning into craniosacral work. And I started receiving it for myself and had some quite profound changes. Couldn't really feel much. And, I learned later, obviously, I wasn't really in my body. And, it sort of began this journey of deeper understanding of myself.
Mhm.
And around 2013, I was being seen by a biodynamic osteo, and she wanted to watch me work with horses, which I thought was quite funny because I was actually at the cusp of not sure if I should do it anymore because I wasn't feeling very confident and so on, and I was still riding track work. And she basically said, you need to change your perception a bit, take it wider,
Mm.
take in the land more. And that really changed the whole session. And I was quite taken
As
by
you,
this
you
guy.
did that gesture, as you did that,
Yeah,
like taken in the land. Like I
yeah,
found myself taking a deeper breath as you were saying, also that something shifted for you that session.
it
Like I
did.
felt something more spacious here for me.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
that was
shifted
it,
for
that whole
you? Yeah.
spaciousness,
Yeah.
which funnily enough, I love as a person, even as a child, that freedom and spaciousness. So I guess
Mm,
it was, yeah, it has quite a different tonal quality to it as opposed to the other types of craniosacral I had experienced.
mm.
But what really grabbed me, which is funny, was the study of embryology, which is a
Yeah.
big, big component to the biodynamic work.
Yeah.
So I was at a choice point, to use the words of the EQUUSOMA program, the choice point. You know, I was thinking about not of quitting craniosacral because I felt like I was useless at it. I didn't want to continue into horse racing. And yet there was I really loved craniosacral work. So I started to look, I was like, well, let's get a qualification in it. So I started to look into studying human osteopathy and the thought of doing 4 years and then postgrad just didn't appeal to me. And then I found a school in London that
Nice.
it had been going for 30 years. And I should add that prior to that, I'd also studied with a school called Equinology. They're based in the US,
Mm.
and they have a long-standing reputation, and their content is very in-depth. So I
Cool.
studied a lot of anatomy and biomechanics through them, and yeah, so I've always been drawn to programs that have a lot of depth to their content, and
Yeah.
their teachers are very experienced, which is
Right.
also why I was drawn to Equusoma.
Right. And
So
so, that's a
yeah,
great bridge, Emma. So you've got this really great history with horses as a child, as a young adult, getting into BCST, equine BCST. And then there's this bridge, and I'm curious about how you learned about us and what, when you saw or learned about this program, what specifically caught your attention about it? Because I think you reached out to me ages ago, I think before
I did.
registering. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Some time ago.
That's
Yeah.
that's a Facebook for you. Yeah, I suddenly
Mhm.
saw it pop
Right.
up in my feed.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think before I'd even started the training in London, so I actually enrolled in the 2-year training in London in 2017.
Yeah.
Um, and prior to that, I can't really, oh yes, that's right. I was studying with equinology, and we
Right.
had to do a presentation. And the presentation I did in one of this particular course was on pullback injuries in horses and the
Mm.
vagus. I had obviously been quite sparked my interest, I think, through biodynamic osteopathy around Stephen Porges's involvement around the
Mm.
polyvagal theory. And so that started sparking my interest around, does this translate to horses? I remember thinking that
Right.
around 2016. And so that was sort of sitting, churning away in my brain. And then I had obviously started the human training, I believe. And here was, where you sort of think, I wonder if someone is talking about this with horses, and then all of a sudden
Right.
you pop up on my feed.
Right.
And I was like, and I remember flagging it, and I think I reached out to you, and you were like, oh, I think we're coming over next year. But I was still finalizing my UK training, and I
Hmm.
think, getting my business going again. So I parked it.
Right.
But that was the beginning.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just that you were, talking about the polyvagal theory in horses. You were talking about the Equusoma program was talking really about the horses having an agency and the human having an agency. And, it was sort of putting a different lens on, say, the world of equine therapy.
Mhm.
Um, you talked about the vagus with horses, and I had actually had a conversation with an equine osteopath around 2016
Mm.
around PTSD in horses.
Mhm.
Not that there was any research on it whatsoever at the time that I could
Yeah.
find.
Yeah.
And because I was pretty sure most of the horses I was riding at the track were like, it was like a war zone for them as far as I was concerned. And
Yeah.
so, do they have PTSD? And of
Yeah.
course, what I found, it's changing now, and I'm sure you'll agree, is that a lot
Mm.
of people were still like, do horses even get headaches? You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if they don't, do they get headaches? Well, surely they wouldn't get PTSD. That must be just a human thing. And yet, having done dissections, that was part of my training in horse and equine anatomy. I'm pretty sure I could see with my own eyes they had brains, cranial nerves, blood supply. They had, you know, they had families, and all of that. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
have I gone off topic a bit? I don't know.
No, I love that you're rambling your way into a really interesting area, which is this idea that while there is certainly more receptivity, I think now to this idea that, horses or even other animals, other species of mammal can experience trauma beyond just humans. There is certainly a lot more that's a lot more present in the literature now. It's still not very
Yeah.
common, but as part of working on my book manuscript, I had done a really strong lit review covering all of that and what do we have and what have we seen so far, and looking at sort of the human category of PTSD, and then the diagnostic criteria, and then looking at, okay, what do we see in animals, what criteria do we have evidence for, that kind of thing.
Mm,
And they've done that for a number of different human diagnoses, for, and for, interestingly enough, a number of human mental health diagnostic criteria were developed based on animal models, i.e.,
mm,
non-human or non-Homo sapiens, right? Like they've looked at these other, animal species and then used that to help with creating sort of some of this stuff, including medications and things like that. A lot of that stuff is tested on other species first.
yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation. But it was fascinating for me in that we've got all these examples of models that are developed out of mammalian or other animal species experiences in the lab, for instance, or observational in the field. And then we take that knowledge, apply it to humans, but then subsequently don't bring that same expertise back around to the animals. And so, you know,
Love that.
and that's where
That back
Equusoma
around.
came in,
Yeah.
right? And Equusoma was like that with SE, somatic experiencing, was a really cool amalgamation of mammalian ethology and
Mm,
or applied ethology, and this idea of how do animals in the wild recover from stress and traumatic experience, that kind of thing. And then medical biophysics and neurological stuff and psychophysiology. There's all these areas of knowledge and research that kind of filter in and formed the SE model that Dr. Peter Levine had created. And he draws from a whole bunch of other people as well. And all of that also to a degree, and indigenous sort of traditions and healing practices. And so there's all these influences in the SE model. And one of them is mammalian neuroscience, mammalian models in research, mammalian ethology. And yet SE isn't hasn't really formed a strong mm, focus in terms of how do we apply it back around to the mammals. It came from
mm,
animal experiences, and yet we're not using it. The predominant way of handling animals is behavioral
yeah. Yeah.
change of behavior, right? And so it's like we don't look at all these other bits and pieces. And so this conversation around, oh, can animals even have headaches, let alone PTSD, is certainly a really
Mm,
fascinating one because it speaks to that human exceptionalism piece, right?
mm.
Humans
Yeah.
we're alone in our, there's this real hubris around like we're the only ones
Yeah.
to have this. And yet all these diagnostic, models and criteria and everything evolved out of, in some respects, animal models of research. And so it's fascinating that there's this big disconnect. And
Yeah.
you may have
That
encountered this
loop not
in your work.
closing.
Well, yeah. Well, we wanted to
Yeah.
close the loop with Equisoma. It was like, well, how do we bring it back around? How do we
Mm.
come back around, acknowledge that trauma, not just PTSD, because PTSD is a pretty narrow diagnostic
Yeah,
category.
for sure.
Like
For
trauma is a
sure.
bigger category and we mean it quite large. But like, can we look at, I mean, technically, lots of different mental health diagnoses can be seen in other animals, and that's a bigger topic than we'll have time for today, but certainly an interesting one that you've raised because it's still, while there's a bit more out there, it's still not the predominant way of looking at it. So yeah, horses, oh, they don't have headaches. No, they can't have trauma. Well, they can have both. They can
Well,
have
and that
attachment
really
challenges.
is
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
no, sorry.
Go
That
ahead, please.
really is what sparked my interest in the Equisoma program is because here was this program that was listening to what I was seeing and reflecting back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I could then really go, well, here's the evidence. I'm riding a horse and we're going to these starting stalls and the horse doesn't want to go there because they know exactly what is happening there.
Yeah.
And then as I got more busy in my equine craniosacral practice and moved away from racing, I would often see horses who had retired from racing. And they had a lot of stuff,
Mm,
going on a float, going away. They would, or seeing somebody leave, they
yeah.
didn't know if they're going to go, where they're going to be back at the races. And so what the Equisoma program started to give me was some language for their caretaker to
Right.
say, because often I think more people are informed now, but they get a horse that's say been off the track
Mm.
and now I don't understand why he gets really stressed going in the float, for example, or
Yeah.
I'm like, well, because in the past, and I have from my own racing experience, and now I have the language that Ecosoma has provided me to say, look,
Mm.
when this horse gets on that float, he does not know where
Hmm.
he's going to end up.
Hmm.
As far as he concerned, and that's where that's can be stored in the body. The last time I did this, I ended up at a racetrack,
Hmm.
or when that horse left that paddock, they didn't come back.
Hmm.
They went to another trainer,
Hmm.
and I think, there's that loop not closing because people might think, well, could horses feel that? And I think more and more people are starting to feel that. But even when
That
I was
requires
riding at
that
the
requires the humans to be able to feel that too, doesn't it? Because
and
how
there you go, and there's another nugget with the
the
Ecosoma program.
right is how like this human exceptionalism, we're the only ones to experience this, and other animals can't experience it. Also embedded in that is a I've experienced it too, but it wasn't a big deal, right? Or oh, that
Yes, yes,
didn't
yes.
impact me, right? So while humans are the only ones to experience this, to for a human to go, oh, well, I wonder if a horse can even feel that when they leave and they don't go back to that farm, and now they have this anticipation of departure and
Mm.
more abandonment or more rupture or more loss or whatever word floats your boat, whatever's applicable. Like how does that person experience those things? Did they also disconnect from themselves in order to cope with similar
Mm.
losses in their own lives? And so it doesn't even occur to them that anyone could experience that as a problem because they themselves have disconnected from it, and they
Yeah,
just override and
absolutely.
float through, right? And so there's these parallels that start to play out. But I apologize. I realize I jumped in again.
No, no, that makes
Exciting
so
topic.
much sense.
Yeah.
No, no, I mean, we could go further with that. Did you, I mean, yeah, no, you touched on departures and you've touched on,
Mhm.
I think for a long, long time,
Mm.
there was an understanding this horse is really stressed because, um, they're seeing someone leave and they don't know if they're coming back. And certainly I wasn't aware of my own sort of experience around departures. And I think that happens a lot. We just get on with it. And then there is that view that, and I've certainly seen this in horses as well. There might be what might be extremely stressful to one horse and not so stressful to another. And again, this is what the Ecosoma has provided me is that, just some added dialogue for the caretaker of the horse. Well, he doesn't mind. Well, that's because he may have some more resilience in his nervous system. He may have a bit more, capacity. He
Mhm.
may have some more resource. This horse may not. And
Mhm.
so their experience of X, Y, and Z will be completely different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Same
there's
with
different
people.
variables. Yeah, totally. We've got different strengths, different temperaments. We've had different histories. We've got different
Yeah.
associations with different things. Our nervous systems are primed in different ways. We have different things that trigger us, different attachment patterns, right? And
Yeah.
there's so much that can create individual differences and variances that are in the queue leading up to this particular problem behavior that we might see. And then how do we work on supporting that? And the human owner is part of that. The practitioner is
Mm.
part of that. The trainer is part of that. The barn owner is part of that. So so
Mm.
so I'm
Mm.
curious, Emma. So you joined our program. I know you weren't part of our in-person group in 2019 when we went out to Australia the first time. So you waited a
I
number of
wasn't.
years. I know you waited in
I was
many.
just graduated from London, so I was like, oh my God.
Too
Yeah,
much at the
yeah,
time. But you joined us online when we had to move online during the pandemic for
I
our
did.
level one. We had to adjust. We pivoted like most other things and programs and services. And then you joined us for level two in Australia when we got to return last year, 2024.
Yes. So that's the two in-person components of level two. Is that
That's right. Yeah. Plus, we had the online modules as well because the program's changed a lot in its format,
it was
since.
amazing.
Yeah, it's grown. It's grown a lot. The pandemic both was a frustration, but also a launch pad to force us into figuring out the format, much earlier than we had anticipated. So it was hard, but also helpful in a weird way. So,
I think you did really well. I mean, and the reason because there's a lot out there. You jump on to the socials, it's
yeah.
like a smorgasbord of stuff. And I think, like I touched on early,
Mhm.
um, I'm drawn to programs that have good lineage. Either they've been going a long time or their content is in depth and the instructor has got some serious experience.
Mhm.
And that's what drew me to Equusoma. And the Equusoma program is that whole umbrella of that, right?
Yeah, we
So,
tried to, with
uh,
the instructors, we
yeah,
tried to make sure that like all the instructors in the program have this breadth of knowledge and experience.
exactly.
And we try to make sure also that the modules are really well founded in terms of research and citation. And we're trying to reference,
Mm.
field studies and ethology and neuropsychology and all these sort of areas, equitation science, and beyond. There's so many different layers. Yeah.
And I think what I liked about it, because it was I didn't want to be an SEP, a somatic experiencing practitioner. I didn't want to be in equine assisted learning or therapy or all of the other abbreviations that exist. Is that it was open to anyone really. And
Mm,
so I didn't go in thinking, what do I want to this to become for me? I actually just went in wanting to find out more
mm,
um, about this, like what we've touched on, this closing the loop, bring it back around to the horse, what's going on with regard and the language. And because having been fresh off the 2-year training in London, which is the
mm,
biodynamic model, and we used a lot of Franklin Sills's work, is very trauma informed. They work with Peter Levine, they work with Stephen Porges. So we had
mm,
it dovetails really nicely in so much, that there's languaging around that. Some of our recommended reading was Waking the Tiger. And yeah, so the Equusoma program was like this lovely parallel that
mm,
also required that invited anyone in. So I was like, well, I'm going to go in, and it ended up being a personal journey as
yeah,
well as something that I could integrate into my practice. What I
that's
also loved about it, which was this very similar to London, is that, well, the London training, we had to get our own sessions and have them signed off.
mm,
The Equusoma program also asks that you get 10 SE sessions for your level one. Is that right? And have them signed off. And I had no idea what it was. I know we had a couple of students on the London train that were SEPs,
yeah.
but I didn't know what that was. It was just an abbreviation. But it was a very interesting way of
Mm,
how sessions unfold. I haven't had an in-person SD session. It's been always been online, but it's just as effective as far as I'm concerned.
yeah.
And that was because I'm very fast by nature. I'm busy. I have a mobile service. It's how I like to operate
Mm.
until I get fed up of that. Finally, stay put to stop me if I'm jumping ahead too
No,
far.
it's good. It's funny that you
Yeah,
mentioned that there because I was going to, if I could slide in
yeah,
here, I would be
sure.
like, oh, and stay tuned for whenever you do eventually get to do any SE sessions in person, especially on a treatment table, because your love of
Yeah.
embryology may really just be very fascinating because there's so much more that can happen when
Mm,
we're in person. And equisoma is similar in terms of how does it unfold. And you would know that for a little bit anyway from the practice rounds when we got together in person in Australia last year.
yeah.
Not quite the same, but there is something to be said for what is it like to um, be in person and experiencing this kind of style of lineage of somatic work in relation to humans
Mm,
and equines. And also, we had cattle at the farm where we had the
totally did. I
modules.
loved it.
So we had practice rounds where the cattle were involved and
It was
the equines
amazing.
were involved. Yeah. And it's the
Yeah.
animals get to be clients or the humans get to be the clients. And so I like that you named that. It's meant to be a program that is about the intersection of interspecies relationship and the trauma that can show up there for
Hmm.
in all the members of that relationship kind of idea. And how do we use those principles taught in the program to work in a bottom-up way to support renegotiation and repair and more
Mm.
felt sense of safety and more nervous system patterning shifting in all involved, regardless of whether you're like equine assisted psychotherapy and learning, equine body worker, human body
Mm.
worker,
Mm.
like equine, like horse trainer, riding
Yeah,
instructor, there's,
yeah,
clinical equine behaviorist, there's all vet tech, there's jockey, there's all these
yeah,
like
yeah.
areas, that where we see these intersections of humans and equines or humans and other species. And trauma shows up in all those places, you know.
And I
As you,
think
Mhm.
the in-person practicals come, at the right time. I think a lot of, and I find even because I've started teaching this biodynamics that people want to quickly learn the thing.
Of course.
But what I love is that, I mean, obviously I started when it was all shoved online, and obviously you've probably changed a little bit since then, is that there were a lot of um, background with regards to information, the five domains model and understanding, um, more around the vagal component and, trauma, how does it show up? And there was a lot of this background, which was very, very important to then lead into what we did these online practice rounds
Yeah.
and you had all these qualified SEPs and we were in breakout rooms. And I remember thinking, I'm not going to be able to do this. And how awkward, but it was actually really fun. And it was about playing with this idea. I think we'll talk a little bit more about it. But where I'm going with this is that I couldn't get to that bit if we hadn't had all the background first, which was really, really important, And
Yeah.
to me, definitely how I operate is I do need to know what's happened before. How did it start? What's the background? Because that will lead me to where I am now.
Mhm.
So by the time we got to the in-person, I still had no idea how it was going to work.
Yeah.
And we were at this beautiful property in Queensland and starting to play with the language. And which, of course, when I was studying in London, the biodynamic craniosacral model has verbal skills that we employ. Mostly
Mhm.
it's a hands-on quiet session, but we
Mhm.
do have verbal skills which probably parallel,
Mhm.
what the EQUUSOMA program teaches with regards to settling. Consent. I'm going to place my hand here. How is that for you?
Mhm.
What are you noticing? Can I
Mhm.
set up a resource for this person on the table if things start to get a little bit tricky, like there may be some shock? So we do something called shuttling. And that was clunky in itself when we started. And then I do the EQUUSOMA program, and there's more language.
Yeah.
And for me, who likes to jump in and talk and get very cerebral, to then be okay with a pause
Yeah.
and the slowing down. And so I love that when we did the in-person practical, we have these animals, we had cows joining in, is that there was a slowness that was invited in by nature in the animals that almost allowed this to take its time.
Yeah.
I was going to mention the word Cyban, but I don't know if we probably need to
Well, we
explain.
could talk about that. Like, and before we go to SciBam, I think I'm going to name something important here in what you just shared that I don't want to lose in what you're saying is you had language previously.
Yeah.
And this is, yes, there's framing and concepts. We've been calling them maps in the program. We've got these concepts, these maps. And within the maps, there's the terrain of the client, human or equine or cattle,
Mm.
bovine, and then there's the maps and learning to recognize what we're seeing, what we're sensing in the other and noticing what we notice in the patterning here up against these maps. And it creates language, but it's not top down in the sense of I'm just going to talk and stay floating
Mm.
above everything in the meaning of all the language, but it's language to access something different.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
it makes sense
That
because
notion.
it's like
Yeah.
there's language for top-down dis dialogue, and there's a place I think for education, like, oh, that's a this or that's this phenomenon happening
Mm.
here, and that can help with like framing and understanding. But then there's using that in a different sort of way, which isn't just mentally understanding it, but
Can I
helping
just touch on
you
that
with
as
it.
well?
Yeah, please, I'd love to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm,
that was the thing when I was getting the personal SE sessions
yeah.
and to have the practitioner just track me, which I think is an incredible skill. And I've obviously watched the videos where you've been doing demos with the students and tracking, and I was just like, yeah. And I have to remember you've been doing it for hundreds of years, so it just comes second nature. But we're all like, wow, how did you, and so is that let me parallel the biodynamic training is that we go into settling, we have still points, we're slowing down. And what the EQUUSOMA program is, then there's a witness to the slowing down.
Right.
As for example, would be I might follow my gaze and it lands on somewhere like something out the window. But then there's a
Mhm,
witnessing to what is happening in my body as I do that. And that for
mhm.
me was a little gateway,
Yeah.
okay, to because even, I mean, the biodynamic training was very new to me. This was then asking me to observe something in my body
Yeah.
which was actually quite difficult to do and challenging. And I might not have a word for it. Like I might feel a tightness and expansion, and then I would go back up here. What does that mean? Is that good or bad? Or is it just it just is. And so the in person where we got to be completely out in nature and we had the cicadas, cycling in, and then to I'd had enough sort of SE sessions to start to go, actually, I'm noticing my shoulders drop,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And this
Mm.
parallels an equine session. It does in
Sure.
so much that,
Sure.
and I'm actually leading into how is this work filtered into the biodynamic work? And
Yeah.
there's a couple of things. One is obviously that I can be okay with it taking time to settle in the
Mhm,
session.
mhm.
I've got a witness to just quietly internally verbalize on my shoulders, softening, so on and so forth. But I can also dialogue with the caretaker of the horse, who might
Yeah.
go, who often say, well, it doesn't seem like he's settling. I'm like, that's okay. We're just gonna imagine this is happening
Yeah.
and we're just slowing down. And I might invite the caretaker to just soften with the breeze. And so there is like a permission that the
Mhm.
EQUUSOMA program and the biodynamic training allows,
Mm.
that it's not a kind of shh, you know, you've got to be like this. And I
Yeah.
actually talk to some of my students. I'm like, you don't have to arrive as a Buddha. You just arrive as you are.
Right. Yeah.
And certainly my teachers in the biodynamic work say that you need to have a sense of self-acceptance to this work. And I believe that EQUUSOMA asks the same. And it also invites you to give yourself permission
Mhm,
to be whatever you are in that moment. That's okay. I realize
mhm.
I've kind of flitted all over the place there, but that's what I've really noticed is that
Yeah.
witness to a shift in your physiology
Mhm.
as you place your eyes somewhere, as you notice perhaps what you might be doing with your hands,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that
Yeah.
slowing down and the tracking.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
tracking
Yes.
is done in a way that's verbal. And in the biodynamic work, we track non-verbally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we
But it's
track
done,
nonverbal in Equisoma too, which
yeah,
is
that's true.
interesting. You
Yeah,
can
that's true. But
absolutely do this
yeah,
without verbal.
yeah. But
Yeah.
there's a sense of it being someone's following you and sitting beside you at the same time without it being, so what's
Yeah.
happening now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, sure. And
Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes I think because you've got some background in embryology, you may have some appreciation for this. sometimes it is this very pre-verbal, less verbal, more like sort of like acknowledgement through like, mm, mhm,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Kind of through these sort of minimal encourager type sort of expressions where I'm
Mm,
vocalizing some sort of acknowledgement through my attunement, but I might not be using words because I'm
yeah.
speaking to a nervous system. And I think
Mm,
sometimes with humans, we do tend to use sometimes more verbal language, but you've
mm,
encountered this in body work, and I know I certainly have in this work as well, where sometimes words just take us out of the experience. And yet, how do we then
totally.
convey attunement? We can still convey
Yeah.
attunement multiple other ways
Mm,
beyond just sort of getting caught up in the words of it all.
yeah.
And that's
I
that's
actually
one of the
had
things.
that experience in
Yeah.
in person. And it
Mm,
was a pure, that's what I, where I was, it really brought it together.
yeah.
And I think that's why the timing of the EQUUSOMA program from, going through the online component to then meeting in person, you can have a real
Yeah.
aha moment, but it's an embodied aha moment, So in the
Yeah.
practice rounds, and they were, it's play, it's mucking around. That's what you talk about.
Yeah.
And, we've got someone tracking, we have, your assistant Kim was sliding in, we have someone keeping an eye on the animals, what's going on there, the parallel process.
Yeah.
And what happened in a particular practice session was purely
Yeah.
pre-conscious almost. It was
Mm,
a body movement
yes.
which just came from very early on and a
Yeah.
renegotiation from a very young version of me.
Yeah.
And it was pretty non-verbal.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just tracked. And
Yeah.
what I love as well, and I made a note to this, was there's the two words that you guys use in Equisome, which is parallel process.
Hmm. Yeah.
Which I love because,
Yeah.
and whether it's right or wrong, I'm always curious when people say, my horse is a mirror. They just mirror us, and I feel
Yeah.
um, that kind of, and this is only my interpretation. I feel like the horse is a
Mm.
sentient being and has the nervous system in their own right. There may be
Yes.
a parallel process. To me, there's
Yeah.
a relational field that comes together.
That's why we use that terminology of parallel process over the
Yeah.
terminology of mirroring,
Yes.
because I think for some, the intention with the language of mirroring is that they're referring to this
Yeah.
parallel, the
Yes.
human and the equine, or the human and the dog, or the human and whatever other, being is having a similar theme or a similar pattern.
Yes.
But it's not mirror in the sense of I'm reflecting you back to you, but I'm a blank slate a la Freud psychoanalytic psychotherapy. I'm just going to sit here quietly and you're going to project all your stuff onto me and you're going to free associate and I'm just going to reflect it back to you as a mirror, but I'm absent from the equation. There's
Yeah.
going to be people who refer to mirroring in that context. But some,
Yes.
I think, use the term to refer to what we're speaking about here, which is our
Yes.
processes mirror one another. Our systems are pinging off of each other. We have similar themes, similar responses, similar
Mm.
somatic patterns playing out unconsciously, not that we knew, but it's there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well,
oh,
that we
I'm
knew.
right,
Yeah.
and here it is, quelle surprise, here, here is the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and so that's sort of how we mean this sort
Mm.
of different version of mirroring, not this absent, thing, animal as projective device, but more like, no, like they've got their own history, they've got their own attachment wounds, they've got their own traumas and adversities and patterning in their nervous systems and what they learned was allowed or not allowed and how they learned how to hold in and hold that stuff back. And they might walk
Mm.
around in functional freeze and appease just like the humans that
Mm.
are connected to them, the owners, the riders, even the professionals. And so thank you for bringing up that term because it is one that I think can be, that's why we prefer that term parallel process over mirroring,
Mm.
because mirroring
Mm.
is defined differently depending on who you're talking to and can be
Yeah.
misunderstood. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's
Mhm.
what I found is that this, it enabled me to observe a parallel process happening and not feel that there was a because of and this horse is doing this because of blah blah blah. There is a parallel, to me in well, we use the relational field term in biodynamic work.
Sure.
We cannot not be connected to everything on this planet,
Yeah.
from the animals to the earth to the cosmos. Everything is interrelation with anything else. I mean, there's a quote, Lauren Isley didn't say it directly, it's from another writer. Well, one
Mm.
cannot pluck a flower without troubling a star. I mean, I love that.
Oh, that's such a great quote. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
there's that beautiful quote from an indigenous woman in the documentary The Eternal Song. I love it so much. She says, you see a plant, the plant sees you, recognizes you, knows that you are family. I love that. Yeah.
hmm this is part of the trauma of the modern age and of colonialism is we're disconnected. Human exceptionalism again. We are separate from all the rest of everything that is here. We are dominant over it and we're not part of it anymore. And that
Mm.
rupture is so profound. It's on all
Yeah.
levels. And so while
And isn't it
equisoma,
asking to be seen?
oh,
It's
yeah,
asking to be seen now more
asking.
than anything else.
Yes. Yes. And it's equisoma, I think, is like equisoma, so equine and then soma, the body. But it's
Mm.
more than just that. We have people take the program who are trying to apply this with dogs or trying to, applying this in an eco context of how can I reconnect with the rhythms of nature and the ruptured rhythms in the environment and my own ruptured rhythms and how are we supporting more
Yeah.
coherence there? And so there's all these offshoots. And so it's really rich. I love that you're sharing this because it is. We're all together in this. It's all interconnected, you know.
And and I'm sure we're probably coming close to the end, but let me touch on how I might do apply this just in my daily life.
I'd love to hear that. Yeah.
In
Mm,
in parallel with my, because I know I do advanced training in biodynamic work, and
yeah.
yeah, so it just works so well together. But if I can recall, I always laugh, like the first piece of homework that Equisoma gave us in the online was just go home and orient to what feels good.
Yeah. Yeah.
In my sort of equine bodywork training, it was okay, you got to do this tonight and that tonight. And so I
Mm,
was like, I've got to, what do I want to do?
mm,
And then I was really very acutely aware that I wanted to just go splat on the couch. But then I was like, I should read a book. I should probably read some of the books that I haven't read. And then I was like, oh, maybe, I know, I should just check this. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this.
mhm.
Can I give myself permission? And it has been a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I'm very aware that whilst I have clients on the table and I'm inviting them to take some time after the session, I'm like, can I employ this in my life? So even this morning, before this interview,
Yeah.
I do this when I'm at home. I will go and get a coffee and I will take that coffee and sit. And I sat on this bench at this table. I sat on this table and I'm near a wetlands and there's the wind moving through the reeds and the sun was just coming and I just let it. And it reminds me of a time when I was in racing and I'd gone back into racing because of lockdowns. I just started your online component. You shoved it all online. And I remember I would take these racehorses out for some grass from their stables because they're in
Mm,
there 23 hours a day.
yeah.
And they would just, this one horse particularly, I'll never forget it. The grass was about knee high. And I watched him and he had his eyes shut. And it almost
Mm,
makes me feel emotional. But he had his eyes shut and he was feeling the grass on his face.
mm,
And I was like, when I'm sitting having my coffee in the morning and I just feel the sun and I feel the breeze, and that's just, I'm like, there you're present. There you're actually realizing how beautiful it is to be here.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find this work is it's not just, oh, let's process trauma, let's blah, blah, blah. It's also,
Yeah.
oh, it's building our capacity to
Mm.
be able to be with more of the goodness of life and not be so much in the stress pattern or the trauma pattern.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it is that, but it's also this other thing. But it's also
Mm.
not just the supremacy of calm, as I call it. It's not just about, well, let's find Zen. It's not that
I
either.
love that.
But it's aliveness. And
Yeah.
aliveness is a wide range of things. So it's
Yes.
not
Yes.
this
Yes.
forced extremity of all
Mm.
activation and all Zen, but can I have more of a range available within my repertoire? Can I
Mm.
take in the goodness, but feel aliveness? And can I slow down enough to allow that? Or if I'm shut down,
Mm.
can I speed up a bit to allow what's there and find this range that is
The
a,
immensity that comes from slowing down, even in, whether it's been online with Equusoma or in person, where we'll start the day with a slowing down, or even in a biodynamic training, and now in my daily life, there's a
mm,
window that opens, and
yeah,
this immensity comes in for me
yeah.
in just the beauty of feeling the light
We're
on my
back to
face.
this then, aren't we,
Yeah,
Emma?
to that
But
expansion, right?
yeah,
And realizing the sweetness in that present moment is infinite,
yeah.
you know?
What
And
happens when
that's,
you hang out with
you know,
it here? What happens when you hang out with it here?
that
That sweetness.
that sweetness opens and there's a stillness there that I carry with me throughout my day because I've started it with that.
Do you feel any aspect of that right now as you connect with the
Mhm.
gesture of it?
Yeah, I feel as
Words?
bigger
Yeah.
and wider than this room.
Nice.
Yeah.
Bigger and wider
Mm,
than the room. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I invite caretakers of these horses to do this,
Hmm.
you know, because they see the horse settling in a session, for example,
Yeah.
and how the horse just is not, there's not like, oh, I'm feeling, I'm feeling the sun on my coat and I'm noticing my shoulders soften. It's a whole sensory experience for the horse.
Yes.
And so Equusoma invites that sensory experience with a witnessing, and
Mm.
biodynamic is sensory in nature. And so there's this beautiful integration for me. But if, that's my daily practice now, and
Yeah.
it has held me in place. Even if I'm navigating personal stuff that has multi layers, when you're like, oh God, this again,
Mm.
there's that moment where I've set the day up.
Yeah.
And that has definitely, Equusome has played a huge part in that, along
Yeah.
with my, yeah.
Yeah. You named something in this, and as I'm hearing you speak, I feel like
Mm,
spreading here for myself too, just hearing you connect with
mm,
that spreading or that spaciousness of you taking up the whole room. And I'm reminded of two things. One of just how much that wasn't possible for you before to even be
yeah.
with that. And then the second piece, which I heard you say in what you shared, which was inviting owners, because that's your clientele, is working with the equine and the owners, to start to dip a toe a little bit into something that's different within their own patterning, because it comes back around to that
Yeah.
parallel process again. How much of the equine client is
Mm,
reflective of what's going on in the human?
hmm.
And we're working on
Hmm.
this thing over here, but it's also showing up over here. And I love
Mm,
hearing you've been playing with this, starting to see how you can take what you've been learning over here and applying it over
mm,
here with the human in the equation, even though the equine
mm,
might be the primary bodywork client, you know.
mm.
And that's been a neat
Actually,
expansion for you as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I have
Mm-hmm.
actually a very tiny example. Yes, just yesterday,
Yeah.
a beautiful caretaker had a new horse, and she had done a bit of online a lesson,
Yeah.
and it was about uh, the horse was stepping into her space, and I'm taking a history as I do, and the horse just steps forward,
Mm-hmm.
and then is asked to step back,
Yeah.
and so I was just observing this and not. saying much. And
Yeah.
but I noticed that the horse had so this is where the two dovetail. This is this
Mm,
example. The
yeah,
horse had
sure.
had a head trauma and
Yeah.
actually existed about 5 feet in front of her body.
Okay.
Okay. And a little bit over that way as well.
Mm,
And so the stepping forward was not disobedient or a misunderstanding from the horse.
yeah.
And so all I said was, why? I'm I'm just going to invite you to step to the side rather than be in front of her
Mm,
and just direct her energy and
mm,
let her find her stop.
yeah.
Because at the moment, like her she was kind of just stepping forward and there was a constant.
Mm,
And so again, the EQUUSOMA program brings the language in. I'm like, what's happening? What I'm observing there is you're stopping something that needs to complete by stepping it back, stepping this incomplete cycle back.
mhm,
And that was my observation, right?
mhm,
And
yeah.
without saying much, the caretaker actually just stepped to the side. And as I was just watching, and the horse took a step forward and stopped on her own.
Mhm,
And I said, eventually, when you stop, she will be able to stop with you. But right now, she also, because of a physical trauma, is existing a little bit in front of herself.
mm,
So anyway, I just wanted to touch on that. So it was just a quiet 5-minute conversation.
yeah.
It was a bit of both of my training, you know.
An interesting
Yeah.
hybrid. And there's so many cool choice points in there too. Like just before the owner stepped in to block the horse, what was happening for the owner?
Yeah.
I think of that
Yeah,
prodrome
I
work
love that.
we talk about,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, and just
Yeah.
before you had the impulse to step in front of her, what was happening for you, for instance,
Mm.
you know? Or
Mm.
let's say if it happens again, let's see what happens if you don't act on the impulse to step in front of her. I wonder what we would see happen,
Mm.
you know? And so there's
There's
all
so many joys.
so many
Yeah.
choice points of how to kind of
Yes.
play with this. And that's what I think I love so much about this. And I know you and I have
Mm.
shared about this before, and you've shared about how the nuances and the richness are one of the things that you appreciate is because there's so many ways of
Yes.
entering into that experience and teasing it
Yes.
apart and getting
Yes.
more connected to what's there in the cue.
Yeah. And what was wonderful, I mean, this particular caretaker of this horse, she has had a lifetime of different training methods.
Sure.
And at the end of the session, she said, in my early training,
Yeah.
it was a thing to be taught, they don't, you move
Yeah.
their feet and you blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. She said,
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that with this mare,
Yeah.
but I'm going to do this now.
Yeah.
And that was an easy sort of
Yeah.
situation. But there are other situations, just as you've touched on,
Yeah.
where it'd be quite appropriate or an
Yeah.
invitation to go, just as the horse steps forward,
Yeah.
what are you noticing? And I
Yeah.
have had in the past a caretaker
Mm,
feel this pressure, and and that's where are they open to perhaps exploring
mm.
what is there?
Yeah.
And when would I employ this in my session time? Well, I mean, that's a matter of discernment. Is the caretaker maybe open to exploring this?
Yeah.
Um, if
Yeah.
not, perhaps I might take the horse and do the session and then
Yeah.
come in a bit later, or maybe it's another time. But that's what the EQUUSOMA program has provided me. Is there an opportunity to bring in the caretaker in a way that invites them to explore something that might not be the horse doing something? It might
Yeah.
be, yeah, a
Yeah.
parallel process thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Very cool, Emma. Very cool. Um, I'm trying to think of how we can best wrap this up because I'm noticing the time and I'm
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Sorry.
we
We were
can
like,
just
it's only going to be
ramble.
half an hour.
We can ramble. I'm realizing one thing from earlier that we didn't get back around to, which was one of the other things that was in my mind, which was SciBam, and we never kind of
Oh, yeah.
describe what that was. And SciBam is a term that Peter Levine came up with to describe different, what we might say, pathways of information or channels of information. So S being sensation, I being image or impression, like the felt sense impression of different sensory channels, what we see, what we hear,
Mm,
we smell, what we sense physically through touch, texture, et cetera, on the outside. Um,
yeah.
that's I. B is behavior. And
Mm,
behaviors can be physical behaviors, but they can also be mental behaviors. There's lots of
mm,
different behaviors. And then there can be affect A, which is emotion, and
Mm,
then M, meaning making or cognition,
mm,
thoughts, beliefs, intellectualizing, that sort of thing. And each of these is a channel of information. And I think you were about to share the context in which you were sharing it earlier was in the context of, tending to be perhaps more heavy on the meaning side of things. And now
mm,
you've got more
mm.
access to some of these other channels, which are giving you, at least I think that's what the context that we were in earlier.
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you remember
Mm.
what you were going to add about that before we kind of went off? If
Well,
not,
I
that's
think it
totally
was
okay. Yeah.
when Equusoma introduced Cybam into the training, it was kind of like, oh my goodness. Um, and to try what I found was to try not to think, oh, this is sent,
Yeah.
more, it became more an integrated body felt experience.
Yeah.
And it was just the same as learning the verbal skills in the biodynamic work. I was clunky.
Mm.
When things paused, I felt awkward. I felt like I had to do a song and dance or come in with, you know, what do you know, and to be okay with a pause. And I found the online portal that where we could rewatch videos and demos so helpful. It
Yeah.
really set me up for the in-person practical to be able to, and it became a play. Like there was no one there with a clipboard marking off. It was exploration and then a discussion,
Yeah.
with whoever was there kind of sliding in.
Mm.
Um, what might you have done here? Or could I suggest this? And you're like, okay, so there's no right or wrong.
Mm.
And but yeah, my certainly is to go into meaning making. I find the image and affect there's so much depth to those two.
Yeah.
What I'm sort of at the moment in my own life is exploring the affect with images that come up. You see what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes. Totally.
Like what it is this image of this memory holding for me
Yeah.
deeply,
Yeah.
so there's an internal thing that's come up in my own personal story.
Mm. Hmm.
But yeah, Cyberham is fantastic. I think the only way I have found to navigate through it is to not get caught up into the, oh, S is this, so this is happening with this person now, so it's that. It becomes more of
Yeah.
a dance.
Yeah, it does. It's in the
Yeah,
beginning, it's going to be clunky, like you say, you
yeah,
know, dancing a waltz in gumboots at first. It's going to feel odd as you're trying the language, and
yeah,
it's going to feel awkward. And in the beginning too, especially as we invite you to be more intentional, like, oh, what was your intention with asking this here? What were you curious about? And
yeah,
it's tough because it's like, oh, I'm trying to take something that feels intuitive and making it explicit.
exactly.
But that becomes
Yes.
easier in time too.
Mm,
Eventually, it
mm,
becomes more integrated, and then
mm,
you're less worried about what it is that I'm seeing, and more, oh, but I know what I'm seeing, and here's where I'm going with this. And it just over
mm.
time it shifts. I imagine it's probably similar for your BCST background too. It's like, oh, this was clunky at first, but now it's second nature. It's simple. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that has been opening up what one of my practitioners teachers call the sensorium, and
Yeah.
that's what Ecosoma has done as well.
Mm. Cool.
And then of course we have to
There's
bring words into the intuitive
to
thing.
yeah, to a
Yeah,
degree. Yeah. But there's
yeah.
that thing again. And what a
There's
beautiful
that thing
thought.
again.
There
I
it is.
definitely I use a lot of gesticulations.
I love it. But it's this, oh,
Yeah,
there's that hole. We're
yeah.
back around. We're back around.
Mm,
Bringing it
that
back around to the
flowering that
experience.
happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's so much richness here. And I want to thank you for your time, Emma, with
Oh, thank you for this. This
again.
was so much fun.
And for it is, I enjoy chatting with you, and it's nice also to hear about some of the different ways. And I know we've had other conversations about the different ways with your like actual cases, and maybe that's a conversation for another time, of examples of where you brought it in with a specific case, and maybe we can park that for a part
For
two.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that.
And then we'll go from there. But thank you so much. And
Thank you. That was
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, thank you so much, Emma.